Hello, everyone. Welcome into Winnipeg Sports Talk. My name is Hrabchak. Today, I'm joined by Lyss Hode. We just finished wrapping up our Team Canada projections for the Four Nations Face-Off, and in this video, we're going to be projecting the other side of the border, Team USA. USA, yes. Absolutely loaded roster was my initial takeaways. We'll get into it in a second. But Lyss, what were your initial takeaways as we built this team?
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't watched our Team Canada video, definitely go check that one out. My initial takeaway for both these is just, yay, go Jets go, because we had a couple of Winnipeg Jets considerations for Team Canada, and we also have a few for Team USA. So we're going to go through the roster here. We're going to go through the locks that are in place already that we have no control over, and then we are going to present to you what our roster would be. This is not a prediction. This is what Connor and I, if we were, what's his name, Bill Guerin in this situation, who would we put on our Team USA roster, and also with the intention of winning. Because if I actually, as a person, as Alyssa Hode, were in charge of Team USA, I would try and make them sink so that Team Canada would.
Right.
So this is what we think is the best roster that Team Canada, or Team USA, could possibly ice. So let's get into it.
Yeah, and the rosters are going to be named December 4th on Wednesday, so really interesting to hear these rosters come out next week, so stay tuned for that. But here are the players that have already been named to Team USA. Each roster already naming 6 players to the roster. Got Matthew Tkachuk from the Florida Panthers, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Quinn Hughes, which is one of 2 Hughes brothers that make our roster, Adam Fox, and Charlie McAvoy. Team Canada's was pretty funny. It was just a ton of centers. As you can see with Team USA, a little bit more spread out. 3 solid #1 defensemen in the NHL and 3 bona fide superstars up front as well, in Tkachuk, Matthews, and Eichel.
Yeah, when it comes to these locks, I think a lot of this makes a ton of sense. The question mark that I have is in terms of them not locking in any of the goalies, because to Connor and I, the goalies are a pretty strong area for Team USA. Not a lot of conversation for the number 1 and 2, but no spoilies. We'll get into that later. But looking at these defensemen, like you said, holy smokes, these are 3 incredible defensemen. Has Charlie McAvoy had a little bit of a rougher start to this season? Sure, why not? He's still a top 10 defenseman in the NHL without discussion. So this is a pretty solid looking starting 6 for this team to have named. If I'm Team Canada, I'm still sleeping with one eye open for sure. And it doesn't get much better as we name the rest of the players. So getting into who Connor and I also consider to be kind of more locks in the situation before we get into the fringe players, we had a couple of guys that we kind of wanted to go over as players who, yes, there is still some room for consideration, but these guys to us, no debate whatsoever that they make this roster. So you'll see that decor is pretty populated, and I don't think that this is a hot take whatsoever. We are pretty confident in these 5 defensemen. You can see we added in Zach Werenski and Jaccob Slavin, 2 of the best defensemen in the NHL as well. Team USA is doing pretty well in this department. This is not a very controversial pick whatsoever. These are 2 incredible defensemen who have had some really good results in their careers and also this year so far. We added in our goaltenders, Connor Hellebuyck and Jake Ottinger. These are 2 unbelievable Vezina caliber goaltenders who, if Team Canada were so lucky to have even one of these guys, it would be a completely different tournament. Team USA runs away with the goaltending for me. These are 2 of the best goalies in the league. But you'll see we only added 1 lock on the forward court in Jack Hughes. That shouldn't be too controversial either. Jack Hughes is one of the best playmakers in the NHL. Awesome skater, awesome hockey sense, really fun to watch play hockey. Everyone loves watching Jack Hughes. There's a lot of really good forwards in the NHL, and I think that, these 4 players we have selected here are pretty strong. But Connor, I feel like we didn't feel super confident that anyone else kind of falls into the same tier as these 4 guys.
Right. Yeah. Like I agree with you that there are more locks in terms of how we built our roster. And like it was surefire that, spoiler, Kyle Connor ends up making our roster, but he's not in the same tier as a Jack Hughes, as a Zach Werenski, as a Connor Hellebuyck, of the importance that they'll play in a role for Team USA. So these are the players that I think are the superstars for Team USA. Jaccob Slavin on your 3rd pair, one of the best defensive defensemen, shutdown guys in the entire NHL on your 3rd pair, is going to be unbelievable. And then you add in the fact that once you get around Jaccob Slavin, you have to shoot the puck on Connor Hellebuyck. And yes, the USA has the best goaltending tandem. You can only play 1 goalie at once, but that 1 goalie, whoever they choose to play, Hellebuyck, who it's likely going to be, this is the best goalie in the NHL right now. So they definitely had the advantage over Canada and everyone else when it comes to the goaltending. Now, Lyss, we talked about these are our locks. We're going to bring up our entire roster now because with Canada, we did the defensive locks and the forward locks. There's a little bit more controversy there, a little bit more to explain. But with USA, they are absolutely loaded on the defensive core and in the forward core. So let's just rip off the Band-Aid, go to the entire roster here. And as you can see, the forward core's filled out, 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 3 goaltenders. We're going to explain all of our picks here, but to the forward core, we added Kyle Connor from the Winnipeg Jets, Jake Gensel, Matt Boldy, JT Miller, Brady Tkachuk, Dylan Larkin, Tage Thompson, Jason Robertson, and Clayton Keller. And on the D core, we only added 2 more players. We only had 2. Brock Faber, a young up-and-coming defenseman from the Minnesota Wild, and John Carlson, a veteran who's played many events for Team USA on the national stage as our 7th defenseman, could maybe be on that 6th spot as well. Like I said in the Canada video, don't get too wrapped up in the line combinations. This is from Puckpedia's Puck GM tool if you want to build your own roster and maybe make your own line combinations. But we just put in the 13 forwards and the 7 defensemen and kind of let them do the line combinations, and then added Dustin Wolf in as a goaltender as well. Let's start with the forward core where we added the majority of the players. What are your takeaways as we built this roster that is just loaded with skill and talent?
Yeah, so we followed the same thought line of thinking with this, is that we chose the 13 best players available, have some guys that are a little bit more versatile in their game, lots of really strong goal scorers and everything like that, but we decided to take the best 13 players available. So we added in, like you said, Kyle Connor. That's a guy who can rip the puck like nobody's business. We know that. Same thing with Tage Thompson. And then we also added some guys that are a little bit more versatile and a little bit less of that archetype of the Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, the best players in the league sort of thing. And guys like Jason Robertson, who's had a little bit of a slower start to the season, but is an incredible two-way player that I think could manage some really tough minutes against some of the other countries in this tournament. And guys like Brady Tkachuk, who bring a little bit of the bite to the game, but also not at the expense of being a really good hockey player, because that's the most important thing. Last thing that I'll say super quickly about this forward core, just double checking, as far as I'm aware, the little arrow on this visual points to what hand they are, correct? Yes. This entire forward core is left-handed. What the heck? That's weird. That's really interesting. So a couple of guys are going to have to play in their off positions and offhand in this situation. So that'll be very interesting to take a look at. That was a kind of a staunch realization here. I'm just looking at this now. That's a lot of left-handed folks on there. Holy smokes.
Yeah, as we built this forward core, that is something that I noticed as well. Jack Eichel and Tage Thompson being the only 2 players that are right-handed. I think the biggest thing that
Riley Nash in there. We know he's right-handed.
Right, exactly. No, the biggest thing with Team USA though, and all the projected rosters that you see come out, is that people want the Tkachuk brothers playing together alongside Austin Matthews on that top line, and I don't blame them. Again, like I said, don't get wrapped up in the line combos. Both the Tkachuk brothers and Matthews make our team, of course. So that would be a line that would be really fun to watch for Team USA. Some of the best snipers in the NHL, as well as Tage Thompson, Kyle Connor, Jake Gensel, Matt Boldy, who has 50-goal potential this year. You have this really nice blend, and I didn't even mention Austin Matthews. But anyways, you have this nice blend of talent and transition with players that can play make to some of the best shooters in the NHL. And then we get to the defense core where we add in Brock Faber and John Carlson. That third pair of Slavin and Faber, 2 great defenseman. Faber obviously a lot younger. Slavin's been in the league a while, but when you just look at Hughes and Fox, 2 incredible puck moving offensive defensemen. Charlie McAvoy, a good defensive defenseman, kind of a two-way guy. Werenski, also a two-way guy, more on the offensive side of things. There's just so much offensive talent blended with the ability to finish their chances up front. And then we get to the goaltending where Connor Hellebuyck's our starter, Jake Ottinger's our backup, Dustin Wolf is our third goaltender. Lyss, any honorable mentions on the forward core, defense core, goaltending? Where do you want to start with maybe some of the players that just narrowly missed out on our Team USA roster?
Yeah, same as Canada. This was tough to do, right? There are a lot of guys who are kind of fringe guys, and it really depends on what your sort of philosophy and strategy is with building the team. A couple of the guys that were left off are guys like Alex DeBrincat and, Vinny Trocheck and Cole Caulfield, who are guys that I completely understand if someone were to have them on their roster. They don't make ours simply because we think they have a lot of XYZ things that make them really good, but there's someone that's better than them in all of those areas and then some on this group of 13 forwards. So I just don't feel like they have enough of a differentiating factor up there on the forward core. When looking at the goaltending tandem, though, choosing that Dustin Wolf pick as our third string is probably, I'd have to say, our most controversial pick on this entire roster.
Agreed.
We wanted to have a little bit of fun with that third string goalie. Contrary to how things are looking with Team Canada, this third string goalie is likely not going to have to play at all and doesn't have some big role, big shoes to fill or whatever like that with Team Canada where there's so much of a question mark around that position. Dustin Wolf is not going to sniff the ice in this tournament,
No.
barring any awful injuries or anything like that. It's but we chose this pick because we thought that, there's something a little bit fun there. It's another one of those higher risk, high reward picks. He's had a really, really hot start to the season. You want to reward someone like that. And, looking at guys like Jonathan Quick, who I've seen in quite a few rosters being the third string goaltender, I completely understand that. That follows a similar kind of legacy pick line of thinking as our Marc-Andre Fleury pick. Spoiler if you haven't watched the Team Canada video. But I think Dustin Wolf has kind of earned his way onto this team after, working his way up through the minors and becoming a really, really important staple for the Calgary Flames. So I really like that third pick. Where are some of your extra honorable mentions here that you wanted to bring up just to let people know we didn't forget them? We just chose to omit them from the team.
Yeah, the Dustin Wolf pick, I 100% agree, is the one that I think we're going to get the most flack for. Jeremy Swayman was the lock consensus. Those were the three guys, Hellebuck, Ottinger, Swayman as the three goalies. He's, I think, rocking an .884 save percentage right now, Jeremy Swayman is, and the Boston Bruins have really struggled. So he has played his way off of this roster for us. I wouldn't mind the legacy pick in Jonathan Quick, like you said. I would not mind also John Gibson, who's had, his fair share of great games for the Anaheim Ducks over the past couple years. But Dustin Wolf, the young up-and-comer who's got the Calgary Flames in a really good spot at the time of this recording, makes our roster. And then the decor, I think the two players that most narrowly missed out were Jake Sanderson from the Ottawa Senators, who coming into this year, I think would have been a lock on my roster. Super high on Jake Sanderson, really high pick a few years ago. He's kind of struggled, as has the entire Ottawa Senators group to begin this season. He hasn't necessarily played his way off the roster, but he was one of those fringe guys coming into the year, and he hasn't really taken that leap and cemented his role on Team USA. So I gave the nod to Faber and Carlson for him. And another player that I've seen is Keandre Miller. The New York Rangers have been... They're still, in a playoff spot. They're around it, but they've just had these weird games. At the time of this recording, they're still in a playoff spot, I should say. But they've had some weird games. They've had really bad defensive breakdowns. They're relying on Igor Shesterkin a lot right now. And I haven't liked what I've seen out of that defense core, whether it's Trouba, whether it's Keandre Miller. Adam Fox, obviously, is one of the best defensemen in the NHL, so he's still playing great. But he maybe was, again, one of those bubble guys that didn't quite cement his place on this team, on Team USA. And then up front, last player I want to bring up here is Brock Nelson. I will say, if USA wasn't so dominant down the middle, like Canada is, maybe not at the higher end of things, but with JT Miller, Dylan Larkin, who we have playing on the wing, same with Jack Hughes playing on the wing, Tage Thompson, who maybe plays on the wing, but we have him as a center. Brock Nelson's a guy who maybe just loses a bit of the numbers game there. You bring in Clayton Keller because you don't have as many of those speedy wingers because you have maybe that speed down the middle. So I do really like Brock Nelson. I think he's had a great start to the year. And he is, I think, he just narrowly misses out. And if there were ever an injury, I think he's the first guy into this group. Any last words, Lyss, on this roster, building Team USA ahead of the rosters being named on December 4th?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting game to play with these rosters, and we encourage you to share yours down below, what you have projecting for Team USA. If you think that we did a terrible job or you think that we missed someone, let us know. We're pretty confident with this roster, but it was really interesting to put this together because it's a roster that you kind of alluded to this, but you kind of have to play your way onto. There's no real playing your way off of it because there are so many good guys in this group right now that you can't go based on legacy alone, based on past alone. These guys need to be playing decent hockey right now, and there needs to be a mixture of having a pretty good track record, but also riding the hot hand of guys who are having a good season. So we think, kind of taking all those things into consideration, we've put together quite a strong roster. I think we already mentioned in the Team Canada video that in terms of center depth, Team Canada is far and away the better of the two, but when looking at some of the other areas, especially with defense in the blue line, Team USA gets the nod from Connor and I, or from me and Connor, should I say. But it'll be very interesting to see how these teams fare against one another. Yes, Team Finland and Team Sweden have a lot of really interesting players playing on them, but I think I speak for a lot of Canadians when I say Team USA is the team that I'm the most scared of, and also that I'm frankly the most interested in outside of my own team here in Canada. So it'll be really interesting to see how these teams kind of fare against each other and if they're kind of up to everyone's sort of predictions of how things are going. Like we said, people think that Team USA has the best goaltending, the best defense, and but these are all the best hockey players in the league who we can see on any given night sometimes are better in certain areas and worse in certain areas. So there is a chance that Team USA gets goalied in certain games. So there are so many different ways that this could go just because it's such a brand new situation. We haven't seen best on best hockey with this generation of players. So I'm just intrigued, flat out. That's the most interesting thing to me, is just how novel this whole thing is.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we're getting best on best. And like Lyss said, make sure you're dropping a comment down below if you disagree with our roster, disagree with our picks, some of those fringe players that we just narrowly left off. If you haven't already, go check out the Team Canada video that we released ahead of the rosters being named on December 4th. And Lyss, this is the last roster projection we're going to do, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who wins the Four Nations face-off? I know we're recording this and it's still 2 months away. Who do you have winning?
I don't want to answer this because my answer is the
USA.
group of players that we just spent the last 20 minutes talking about. It is Team USA that gets the nod for me. I think just flat out, there is no break for this roster. And obviously line matching is whatever, but, going out with your third pairing against Jacob Slavin and Brock Faber, like, be so for real right now.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? And like you said before, if the off chance that you get through that or you take the puck away from Jack Hughes, which is not easy to do, like, you still have to face Connor Hellebuyck or Jake Ottinger. Like, be so for real. Like, this team is so good across the board. Listen, it hurts me to say that, but at the same time, it makes my heart so happy because it just signifies how much this game has grown in the international presence. We've talked about this before, Connor and I, that, we're not a huge fan of the fact that we don't get to see every nation represented in this tournament in some creative way. I feel like there was potential to have some Team Europe or something for some of these other countries and whatnot, because the fact that we get to sit here and I say, I think that the best of Team USA beats the best of Team Canada, and I'm devastated because one of the top 5 players in the NHL isn't in this tournament because he's from Germany, is something that me from 10 years ago would just be so happy to hear, right? So, I mean, there is a silver lining to everything. But at the end of the day, I'm a Canadian girl through and through and through. And, having to admit this is not fun for me. But let's look at the positives. It is really great to see the growth of hockey. The best player on this Team USA is a guy who's from a state where there is no snow. You absolutely love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think Team USA, if we're predicting right now, I think they win this tournament. But some hope and some hope for people who are picking Team Canada, rooting for Team Canada like we are. That power play is going to be so nasty for Team Canada. The argument for Canada is that they have the best 3 players in the tournament. That's the argument if you're picking them to win. And their power play might go 50% over this 4-game sample or whatever the amount of games are for this tournament. So either way, it's going to be super, super fascinating, like Lyss said. USA, Canada, Sweden, and Finland in the Four Nations face-off. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you've hit the like button down below. Hit that subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss all the content coming out on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel over these next couple months as we are in full swing of hockey season. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the Four Nations face-off in February. Here are our rosters. Let us know in the comments below what you think. Have a great day, everyone. See ya.